Not everyone understands house music. It's a spiritual thing, a body thing, a soul thing, a soul thing.
Hi, everyone. It's Randles-Friedman, host of Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay. Today, I have a new guest. His name is Scott Graham, and he is on to talk about a few different topics. Welcome to the show, first of all, Scott.
Thank you. It's good to be here. You're just excited to get going on all the books that I've written and talked about, and I've got a lot of opinions on a lot of different things. So
Good. Let's jump right in and talk about one of the topics that you sent me an email, which is androphile. Am I saying it?
this is the book, Androphile Pride, and that's actually that's an androphile flag because everybody has to have a damn flag these days.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, tell my audience what that means, first of all, because I had to Google it to know what it meant. And so tell my audience what that means and how you kind of came into that.
20 years ago now, there was this guy. I'm not going to say what the guy's name is. You can Google him. He came out and he voiced, from his perspective, was a real concern. And his concern was that once you identified as a gay man, you got all this other shit thrown on top of you that you needed to march in lockstep with. And if you didn't march in lockstep with, you were kind of a shitty gay man, for lack of a better word. And interesting, as I wrote this book as a sidebar, and this is still true, there is a diagnostic tool that identifies internalized homophobia, which we all would say is like some sort of screwed up mental illness, right? Mm-hmm. I've got that piece. And one of the criteria in that diagnostic tool is that you disagree with the leadership or what the leaders are saying in the gay and lesbian movement. So according to that tool, if you stepped forward and said, you know what, I just really disagree with, this bathroom stuff that's going on. According to that tool, you would have internalized homophobia because you're disagreeing with what the leadership's putting out there. It's almost like what Trump does to Republicans when he identifies them as rhinos, Republicans in name only. Except it's much shittier because you're not like gay in name only. You're like, fucked up.
Yeah.
And need therapy. So it's like one step further. That's kind of the nexus of his criticism. I'm not gay. I just like to have sex with men. Just because I like to have sex with men does not mean I need to support women's rights. I'm not a feminist. I just like to have sex with men. I'm against abortion. I just like to have sex. And just because I'm against abortion doesn't mean that I'm like, not sticking with the party. I'm a gay man and I don't like all these like drag queens parading around all over the place. I mean, I say gay man because I identify as gay man. So I like to have sex with men, but I don't like these drag queens. So that's an opinion, not a diagnosis. And what
you said you identify as a what?
I identify as a gay man.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So I keep slipping and saying gay man when I mean to say a man who has sex with men. And so this guy reacted to this piece and he started this. That's where the term androphile came from. Same-sex love, men who love men.
Yeah.
Simple piece. And he published a book called The Androphile Manifesto, and you can still get that. But then after a period of time, he went off the deep end. So he started, he was like hanging out with Nazi groups and these like Nordic wolf group. It was crazy stuff that he was hanging out with.
Yeah.
And so my concern when I wrote the book was that some kid surfing around the internet trying to figure out who am I? Mm-hmm. What am I? What am I doing? I just like, what is going on here? And they stumble on this guy's site. They get sucked up to his manifesto, and then they go down this kind of Proud Boys avenue. That prompted me to write this book. Now, the book starts off with echoing these same criticisms. Like, if you're a man who likes to have sex with men or a boy who likes to have sex with boys, and you've got an issue with effeminate men, that doesn't mean you have an issue with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's an opinion that should be respected.
Yeah.
And so then I go on this piece, and what I say in this book are three pieces. The whole first half of the book concludes with this piece. Don't swallow what the LGBTAQRSTV, whatever, like it's the growing acronym. That whatever they tell you, don't buy it.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy it. Just because you like to have sex with another guy doesn't mean you have to buy that.
Right.
Don't buy what this guy who originated the androphile movement said. Don't buy his bullshit either.
Yeah.
And don't even buy my bullshit. I'm not trying to get you to buy anything. Nothing. Figure out who you are and march to the beat of your own drum.
Yeah.
And if you like to wear dresses and fingernail polish, do that. If that's not something that's your cup of tea, don't do that. And the whole second of the half of the book is kind of questions and answers and values to just clarify and figure out where you're at so you can march to the beat of your own drum.
Yeah.
Whatever that drum is. And part of that piece for all of us comes down to looking at the values that we were raised, right? If you were raised Catholic, for example, and I'm not picking on Catholics here. If you're raised Catholic, you are raised with certain opinions about what it means to be a man who has sex with men. The guy that I'm dating belongs to a church where he lives, and they are very liberal it's a Catholic church. They're very liberal, and they've gotten called on the carpet by the Catholic Church a number of times.
Yeah.
Because they're welcoming to, the gay and lesbian community.
I'm assuming this church is in New England because it's
Yeah, because New England's the hip place that these types of things can happen. Yeah. So that's kind of this. That's kind of this nexus. So all the books that I write are all nonfiction, and they're really focused on making a difference.
Yeah.
Impacting something. And so that's the mission of this book, to really help people. This chapter is called "It's About You and Only You." That's what the book's about.
So you wrote this book kind of starting off to kind of counter the guy that started this because he ended up going off the deep end.
Oh, yes.
And
it's just as bad as, like, you would say gay leadership, right?
Yeah.
He's like,
And so, and do you think it's worked? Do you think that people are like you coming up in search results now more than he has?
That whole androphile piece is still floating out there. And so how would I define if it worked? If there is one gay, for lack of a better word, kid who reads this book and gets it together and figures out who they are and marches to the beat of their own drum, I'm successful.
Yeah.
I'm successful. Doesn't need to be a bestseller, doesn't need to be a movement, just needs to be held out there that says, don't swallow what everybody's telling you. Jesus. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great that you wrote this because since this guy did decide to follow the Proud Boys or be a Nazi or whatever, it sounds like I think it's amazing that you wrote this to kind of like say, hey, this isn't how it has to be. So that's great.
I even went because I was concerned that the gay community is going to see this book, the lesbian community, and they're going to be like, oh, you're homophobic, right? Because you're holding out this. I got this picture. Can you see that? There's a picture. That's me and Ken Williams from the 80s at the Florida State Fairgrounds. We were spit on by people that were coming out to the Florida State Fairgrounds, and we were handing out gay and lesbian stuff. I was at the University of South Florida, and that was with the Tampa Business Guild. That is big. That's me. That's Ken, and that's Barry. So I've done my dues.
Yeah.
I have served my dues, and in fact, here's another one from the Tampa Gay and Lesbian Pride Committee, when I got an award for organizing the second Gay Pride Festival in Tampa.
And now Tampa's got a huge gay population.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, we've always had a huge gay population. It's not like we're
Well, they're more
breeding.
open about it now, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's awesome. You want to talk about? Is there another book that you've written 27 books? So tell me about another one that you're most proud of.
This one right here, we'll have to talk about this one. This is my third in this, but I'll give you a little preview. So I've written business books. That's my most recent business book. I've written books on psychedelic therapy.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if you're in there and interested in taking mushrooms to deal with your emotions and depression and anxiety, I've got some psychedelic therapy books for you.
What's the name of that book? That book I want to buy.
This is the psychedelic integration workbook, and this is the psychedelic preparation workbook. And I've got another book on psychedelics floating around here. This is a Buddhist book. So I'm like, they're all things that I am interested in. And if you don't think you have time to read all my books, you can read my time management book to figure out how to do that.
I just interviewed someone last week. It's this couple that do a retreat in British Columbia where it's about a 4-month program, but you go to them for 5 days in this luxury kind of thing. But it's like a month building up to you going to the retreat, and they're doing you're doing basically mushrooms with them, and then there's a 3-month afterwards where they're kind of doing. I think it's fascinating what they're doing. So they're putting you in a safe environment to try it, and then might help you learn how to microdose and all this other stuff. So it's really cool.
It's an upcoming. I wrote those books similar. In my motivation in writing these books is that I think, I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong. I think that psychedelics are going to kind of ripple across the country.
Yeah.
Especially with, Kennedy now as part of Health and Human Services, because he is like a psychedelic fan.
Okay.
I didn't. And so I could see him as he gets rid of all the vaccines that we take, replacing that with psychedelic therapy. Yeah. And then people will just be high on mushrooms and won't care about vaccines. But or anything else for that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
But if that wave comes through, did you know psychedelics are legal in Somerville, Massachusetts?
Are they really?
Yeah, really.
I just moved from Somerville, and I live one town. I live one town over now in Medford, Massachusetts. So I had no idea. There is a mushroom shop there, but they said they don't sell psychedelics. But
yeah, it's going in waves. So I don't know. It might be legal for you to grow your own mushrooms and take your own mushrooms, right? And it goes in waves on these pieces here.
I can walk to Somerville. That's so crazy.
And you, if you went to Somerville to find mushrooms, your walk home would be spectacular.
But see, the thing is that I'm very interested in it, and I want to try it. My husband will not try it with me, and that's where I got the mushrooms in chocolate form at one point. They were sitting in my refrigerator for a while. I asked my husband, like, let's do this. Let's try it. Let's just like lay in bed and watch TV, or just lay there and listen to music, and let's try it. And he says no, because he thinks that I'm going to go off the deep end or something, or I'm going to get paranoid or something if I take too much, and he doesn't want to be responsible for it.
So would he, if he doesn't want to do it with you, would he like babysit you?
No, he doesn't want to do that either.
Oh, so you got to find a babysitter I
got to find a babysitter. And there is a, I have a friend that went to Arizona to this couple who's supposedly have been doing this for a long time, where they invite you into their home for a day or two, and they they babysit you basically, and they give you mushrooms, and then they give you microdosing afterwards. And he said he's done it twice with them, and he said it's life-changing. Like he spoke to his mother who died, a year before or so. And it's really, he spoke to his mother in space, he said, and he had a, great trip or whatever. And just now he microdoses, and he says he can tell a huge difference in his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I want to try it, but I just need someone. I mean, I should probably just go to this retreat with these guys and do it the right way, but I don't
Well, you
know.
can connect with me and stroll up here to Vermont.
Okay,
I'll
I may do
babysit you.
that.
So here's a piece of, for any of you who are listening to this, whatever, if you're interested in like mushrooms or a psychedelic piece, a critical piece around this is getting ready for that.
Okay.
And the critical piece around getting ready for that is doing two things. Number one, developing what is called in acceptance and commitment therapy, psychological flexibility.
Okay.
That means that, when things aren't going great in your life, you're building skills so you don't get off the deep end, right? Somebody, has some trouble at work and they go home and they don't have psychological flexibility and they're worried and they can't sleep at night and all this other stuff goes on. Someone who has psychological flexibility is balanced about that. And the reason that's important to develop as a skill is when you go and take mushrooms, let's just say mushrooms, you could have, a neutral experience. You could have some negative bumps in the way and you don't want to fuel them. And you could have a great, fantastic experience, and you've gone down this road of pleasure. You could go down this road of shit. You could go down this road of pleasure, and you finish, and you're like, well, did I hit my goal? Because if you're going there, you want to be able to work on it. And so, if you take psychedelics, you really want to go someplace where you're out in nature, where there's not something that is going to diminish your experience of the psychedelics. And that would include watching television, movies, TV shows, listening to music, going to a concert. All of those things are going to diminish your experience of the psychedelic that you've taken.
Yeah.
And so you want to go someplace where there's not this stuff, where you're not listening to music, not distracting yourself, and just experiencing what that psychedelic is giving you directly.
And is that what your book is kind of talking about, guiding people through that?
Yes, and I have a book about engagement that put out there. So yeah, so if you were looking to, where did I put the book? If you were like saying, what do I need to do to get ready for a psychedelic experience so it's great, you would do the psychedelic preparation workbook. Which would take you through 60 days of stuff to get ready.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there are a lot of clinical trials that are happening with psychedelics and stuff, and they're, I lived in Basel, Switzerland for a little over a year, and now I just read there's a clinical trial there where they're giving patients ecstasy and like MDMA and stuff, and just trying to see like how that is impacting these people that have these psychological issues and stuff. And it's, from what I've read, it's actually been very helpful.
Yeah. So last year I was in a monogamous committed relationship for 31 years.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
And Brian got in a car accident and burned alive right before COVID hit. And I wrote a book on that called Come As You Are, Meditation and Grief. And then, so that was in 2020. And then a few years later, I wrote Come As You Are 3 years later. And this book is now Come As You Are 5 years later. Last year, I took a bunch of MDMA and had a house sitter and did some work around the grief around that. So there's a book out there called MDMA and Grief. It's like number one. If you Google MDMA grief, you'll see that book. And it turns out, I did not do this purposely. This is Google AI, God knows what they've done. So there's this very conservative Republican congressman from Texas.
Okay.
Who was he went to war. He's got PTSD, and he took MDMA to deal with his PTSD. And he wrote a very compelling piece about the MDMA. And so I wrote him and said, hey, can I include your piece in the book? I first wrote him and said, you want to write a foreword? No, I don't have time to write a foreword. I'm too busy doing Republican stuff in the United States government. And so he didn't write the foreword, but he told me to include this part in the book, and I sent him some pieces about what it was about. I sent him some podcasts, and he's like, fine. So, of course, if you write a book, like Zach, if I wrote a book and you wrote something in the afterword, you would be listed as like a contributor of the book. It's the only, you're supposed to do that. So I listed Morgan Luttrell as the contributor of the book. And now somehow Google thinks we wrote it together.
Oh, wow. And what does
We
he think
didn't
about
write it.
that?
We didn't write it together. And it's, you know, part of this stuff is like, once your name is out there around something, you know, it's really hard to put it out.
And did it help his PTSD? Is that what his conclusion was?
Yeah. His conclusion, and talk about strange bedfellows. So here's this guy who said, go ahead and do this. And now he's listed as a co-op. When you go to Morgan Luttrell's official Republican page by Google, my book is listed as
That's pretty
his
cool.
book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
except he didn't really, he didn't say, I want to write a book about it with a fag. And that's, I want to be associated with that as a Republican congressman. So I sent it to him. I'm like, look, he's not even listed on the front cover on the book. It's just me.
So going back to your 31-year relationship, like, how did you? Is that what is the MDMA? Is that how you kind of got past it? Because I couldn't even imagine. So I've been in a relationship for 26 years, monogamous relationship, and I couldn't imagine not having Andrew in my life.
It's really it's been really difficult to go through those pieces. At the same time, I don't regret it whatsoever. Right? I mean, it's if Andrew died, you would have a really shitty time. Yeah. And really, Zach, what I'd say to you is, well, congratulations, because you had a relationship that now the result of that is now you're having a shitty time. Because the other alternative is you could just keep people, a distant way, fuck all kinds of people on Grindr, don't give a shit about anybody, and be really empty. And then if they died, you wouldn't care. But the truth about grief that people don't talk about is that the depth of our grief is directly related to the depth of our love. Mm-hmm. Period. Yeah. And so if it's going to happen because it's either going to happen to him because you're going to die, or it's going to happen to you and because he's going to die. Yeah. And that pain is worth the price of a life well lived.
It's a good way to look at it.
Absolutely worth it. I wouldn't change anything knowing all the shit I had to go through.
And how did you get past it? Was it, I kind of read what you sent a little ahead of the interview, was a lot of meditation, and talk to me about like how you kind of got through the grief.
So the other myth is that you never get through grief. Ever, 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 ever. That's a total bullshit thing, right? It's just, it's not, because grief's not a problem to be solved. Mm-hmm. Part of the issue in our society is that we've succumbed to this happiness bullshit that's out there, that we're all supposed to be happy all the time. We're supposed to be farting rainbows, dancing with unicorns, and full of joy and love. Mm-hmm. And that's just not true about what life's about. Life's good and it's bad. Yeah. And it's great and it's shit. And it's joyous and it's painful. And you can't have one with the other. You're not going to have light without the dark. Yeah. It just doesn't work that way. You're not going to have summer without the winter. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. If you're in New England, if you want to have a great summer for one day, you have to shovel snow for the other 364 days of the year. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And to lament and try to avoid that. So it's more effective to not focus it as a problem that you have to get rid of, to just focus on it as a piece that you have to integrate. One of the things I did is I really, realized, like, and I bet this is true for you, Zach, I bet you are not really Zach that you were 26 years ago.
Absolutely not.
You're probably an Andrew Zach.
Oh, totally.
Zach Drew. Yeah. And the same thing for, your spouse,
Yeah.
right? There's a part of you that he's always going to be in.
Mhm.
And so after Brian died, I went and had my name officially changed to be Graham-Stevens. And to do that nowadays, since, it was not a big deal like many years ago, but ever since, 9/11, like everything has to line up.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get a court order to change your name.
Yeah.
And they actually send that court order and they change your name on your birth certificate. So if you go to change your name, it has to be changed on your birth certificate, unless you get married, and then you got your marriage certificate that shows you the new name. Well, when we got civil union way back when, in the first wave of legal stuff, right? The gay marriage stuff is just like the marijuana stuff, which is just like the psychedelic stuff. It happened in waves. And so we got part of that first wave, and we both kept our names. We didn't change our names. But after he died, I wanted to just carry that piece with me. And so we had to go to court, and the judge was like, "Why do you want to change your name?" And I'm telling you, everybody was sobbing by the end of that story.
It's a great story. I so respect it.
Yeah, it's funny when when we got married, it was just, I'm keeping my own name. But after he died, I was like, no, this is different.
Yeah.
I want that. I want that now.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did in our relationship, which was, I don't know why we did this. I'm a life coach. And so that's part of the reason that we did this, is that when we were together after 10 years, it was part of the legalization movement. I didn't realize this until I opened up these time capsules and I found an article about us in the newspaper. We decided we were going to do a time capsule to mark our 10-year anniversary. And it started off small, like this big, and it ended up filling a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket.
Oh, wow.
Of stuff. And one of the things that we put in that Home Depot bucket, we asked our friends to do this, and we did this, is we wrote letters to the future. And so everybody, and we didn't label them. People just wrote the letters and we shoved them all in, sealed in envelopes. And then when we reached our 25th anniversary, we did it again. And we wrote letters to the future and stuffed them in there. And the intention was that we would open it up at our 50th anniversary. And we'd get these snapshots in times and open up these letters. So, I didn't know what people wrote. I assumed that most people wrote fluff stuff, right? Who's the president? What's going on? You're a great guy, whatever. But I knew Brian and I, because, we're in a relationship, we're probably not going to write fluffs. I did not know what he wrote.
Oh, wow.
Each of us wrote a letter to each other. And then we wrote a letter to ourselves in that piece. And it's funny how kind of blunt and courageous you can be when you don't think you're going to open up something for 20 years. And so I knew in the time capsule, there were 8 letters that were just dynamite. A letter that Brian wrote to me, a letter that I wrote to Brian, the letter I wrote to me, and the letter that Brian wrote to himself. So 8 letters like that. One of the things with MDMA, I could not open the time capsule. I had gone through all this stuff. I just could not. You can hear as I was talking about it, it still is a piece that it just reverberates with who we were at that time. Pictures, hundreds of pictures in the time capsules that were not digital because there were no digital shit in 1998. We just concerts we'd been to that year, everything. And so I knew I just could not even bring myself to they were in the closet and I was keeping them in the closet. Um, Sidebar: when you take MDMA to deal with PTSD or grief or some dark emotion,
Mm-hmm.
you can, unlike psilocybin or other stuff, you have to have a significant therapeutic relationship with a therapist. They need to know your shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because MDMA, now when you take MDMA, for those of you who haven't taken it, or for you, Zach, you should get your boyfriend to take it with you. Anyways, we won't talk about that now. But when you take MDMA, it does not change your perceptions of things. It's not like getting high and everything seems wonky, or getting
Mm-hmm.
drunk and everything seems, spinny. What it does is it makes you feel love and compassion and joy. Like you just want to go hug people. You just feel so much joy and love. So what that does for a person who is working with a therapist, and the therapist knows their deep, sharp, dark shit, is you take this stuff and you feel this joy. And then the therapist asks you questions to bring up all your deep, dark shit.
Mm.
So that's the two-parted piece. You just don't take MDMA and, you have to take MDMA and you have to talk about and experience your deep, dark shit. What MDMA does is it kind of like bubble wraps you.
Okay.
So that you can talk about your deep, this oversimplification, but it bubble wraps you so you can talk about your deep, dark shit. The horrors you saw at war, the sexual abuse that happened, the physical abuse, the stuff that if you were in a regular therapy place, you couldn't talk about because you would be so distraught.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fucking horrible. So that's the first thing it does, is bubble wraps you. But the second thing it does is it kind of like re-records what that experience was with an incredibly pleasant, loving sensation.
Interesting.
That's an oversimplification too. It doesn't really do that. But what happens is that after you have kind of processed it with this therapist, and he or she has like pushed you to do that, when you remember it, it's not as intense and difficult because there's an overlay of another emotion around that. It's not all just shit when you talk about it. So I didn't need to do that because I didn't need a therapist because I had the letters. The letters served to pull this stuff up.
What was your biggest surprise in the letters?
That Brian smoked cigarettes.
And you didn't know?
I knew he smoked cigarettes.
Okay.
I wrote in my second letter, started off with, how are you? How are you doing? It's probably difficult because Brian's dead. That was how my second letter started out. Because, 50 years smoking cigarettes, high likelihood that he would have died of cancer. And it wasn't a high likelihood that he would have been burned alive in a car accident. But that like totally floored me.
Wow.
So to make this stuff stick or make this therapeutic, what I had a friend who was a trip sitter. He's an EMT, so if I went off the deep end, he could do whatever. And because I'm an EMT, so I know other EMTs. And I told him, I says, the number one thing, all you need to do is hang out with me and make sure that I'm not, going crazy. Mm-hmm. And ask me you need to make sure I read the letters. Because when I took the MDMA, I'm like, oh man, this. He's like, are you going to read the letters? I'm like, oh yeah. He really focused me back for those therapeutic pieces to happen. I could not have. I can absolutely say that I could not have opened those time capsules and read those letters without the MDMA. It would have just been You could see as I'm talking about it now. And I opened those a year ago.
And was it healing though, being on MDMA and reading them? Like, did it help you?
Yeah, I mean, the perspective of those letters really helped me. What Brian had said to me in those letters helped me. It's amazing. Um, I have so much gratitude for that wisdom that we had. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't feel like wisdom at the time, but let me tell you, in retrospect, that was such a powerful intervention in my own life that we laid in 1998 and 2013 when we wrote those letters. And to hear those things from him and from me was really powerful, but more so from me in the letters that I wrote.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book about that, MDMA and grief, and then this, which is the third piece. Um, um, there's a chapter in here about the MDMA and what that did to me in the months afterwards.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and read the letters now, or you're good
I
with
have,
Okay.
and I scan them. I packed all the time capsules away, but I scan the letters
Yeah.
so that I got them as a guidepost for where I was at because they were that powerful.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So then I wrote. So then this book is my third book on grief, or this may be the fourth. So my first book was the Falling Apart and Meditation COVID. The second book was Life 3 years later, because what happens is that everybody forgets, and you're still carrying around the pain.
Yeah.
Um, and the message that I carry from that book, and so here I'll give this message to you now. You don't have to read the third book, the second book. You can just go right to this book. The real core message behind that is that grief doesn't end. It's not bad. And the best thing you can say to somebody, hands down, who is grieving months afterwards, is to say to them, how's your grief? That's it. How's your grief? Interestingly enough, it's probably the best thing you can say to somebody who's struggling with depression or anxiety is to come up to them and say, how's the anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't ask that because they're afraid that the person is going to vomit whatever they're freaking out about all over you. That's not going to happen because in order for them to do that, you'd have to come and say, what are you feeling anxious about today? Tell me all about it. When you come up to somebody and saying, how's the anxiety? They're going to say, it's worse today than it was yesterday. And that is a helpful perspective because we're always focused like this. And to have that, you're actually giving that person who's depressed or anxious or has PTSD or has grief, you're giving them a huge gift because you're normalizing it. Mm-hmm. And that gives them permission. And you're going to help them see that their experience of grief is like this. And their experience of depression is like this. And anxiety and PTSD, that it's not, because what they'll say is like, I'm depressed all the time.
Yeah.
I haven't slept in 17 years, right? Which we know is not possible. Yeah. Right. You know, I'm paralyzed with anxiety, but they went there, they did this and they did that. Yeah. So it's like this, but by asking the question, you help them see this. And this came out in my third book because, you don't have to do the math. 31 years with a guy. I'm an old man. I've had 2 knee replacements. I might get a hip replacement this summer. I'm falling apart. And everybody always asked about my knees. We'd go for a walk. We'd, go on a hike, and they'd hear me go. They'd say, "How's your knees?" Oh, they're fine. They're this or that. Nobody ever asked about my grief.
Yeah.
Ever, 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 ever. No one ever went there. So that's the message of the second book. It's a normal piece. People are going to forget. And we can't forget because if Andrew died, you would not forget.
Yeah.
Believe me, I have not forgotten about Brian.
Yeah.
And I never will. And it's silly to think that I'm somehow going to be on the other side of something.
Yeah.
Right. And forget me. I mean, Zach would have it easy if Andrew died. I would have it easy. I have it easy when Brian dies. Who has it really hard? It's these people that have had their kid shot in school.
Yeah.
They are never, ever going to get over that.
Yeah.
And it's arrogant of psychotherapists to think that, well, we have to medicate this, or we have to do that, or we have to do that, or you have to talk about this, or you need a journal, or you need to do that, to try to put that behind them. I don't want to put that behind me. Man, Jesus Christ, it's 31 years of my life. I don't put that behind me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way, especially when my father died and my mother went through grief for over a decade and tried to talk to therapists and stuff. Somehow she finally worked it through, and she doesn't dwell on it every day, but she still thinks about him every day. So I get it.
Yeah. What she learned was don't tell other people about it, because then they're going to be like, oh my God, still, you need to go to a therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone wants to what's a website, or do you have a website, or can
you can go to gscottgraham.com.
gscottgraham.com.
Or you can just Google my name. This third book is about falling in love again.
And you've done that.
And I've done that.
Okay.
And I very quickly fell apart.
Okay.
When I fell in love again. Because it's really fucked up how we are. Like, I'm clearly sitting here saying you don't get over grief.
Yeah.
Right. But there must have been some part of me that was like, oh, you're all fine now.
Yeah.
Right. And the second I fell in love, I fell apart. Because I was not guilt, but there's this piece of, it's the same thing that mothers who have lost their kids during childbirth they struggle to get pregnant again. Mm-hmm. Because it could happen again. Yeah. Right. And so, I was not looking for love at all. And, and then to fall in love, and after kind of thinking I was over all this, it just pulled the rug out from under me.
And how did you meet?
We actually met online, which was really surprising because I was just liking people on Match. I had grown so indifferent from Grindr. I mean, it wasn't like, when I was growing up, when you were growing up, for lack of a better word, like, at least you had to go to a fucking gay bar and be kind of have your shit together. Yeah. Even if you crawled in with like a hood over your head. Nobody would see you. You have to have your shit together in some ways. Now you can have an app on your phone, and it's so bad. I don't know if this still happens, but when I was on Grindr, you could actually make the Grindr app look like a to-do list. Oh. So when if somebody picked up your phone and looked at it, instead of saying Grindr as the app, it said to do. And you had to type in a code to be able to get in. And so now every hoodlum can get on there that doesn't have their shit together. And it just, the whole dating piece is hollow, unfulfilling, swipe, hookups. It's reduced relationships to getting a blowjob at a rest area. Yeah. But it's on an app now. And that was part of what pulled the rug out for me, because I had just been on the app and I'd be fucking around here, fucking around there. Yeah. And it was all meaningless. And then boom, suddenly it wasn't meaningless anymore. And we hit it off really deep, and And how long have you been together? We've been together since September of last year. Okay. So and I talk about that in the book, talk about the struggles that are going on around that, for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about him because it's about me. And really it's about, what does it mean to kind of integrate and deal with those voices in your head about this, that, the other.
Well, congratulations on meeting somebody new. That's awesome.
Yeah. Gary.
Well, website again is gscottgraham.com.
You Scott Graham, right here on the book. Here we go.
Are your books on Amazon as well if they wanted to go?
Yeah, they're everywhere. They're on Amazon, they're on Google Play, they're on Barnes and Noble. They are like everywhere.
Well, you have a lot of great books, and I'm sure my audience will go, but check them all out. Scott has written 27 books, and we've talked about a couple of them, and I didn't know you had all these books, and there's so many great ones that I'm going to go and check out your website after this. So thanks so much for being on, and thanks for sharing your story, and I'm glad you found somebody.
Yeah. And I would hold out this to your listeners. I'm going to do this for you, Zach, and your listeners. I'm going to give you a digital copy of the book.
Okay. Thank you.
And so, listeners, if you want a digital copy of the book and you would like to read this, this is like $10 on Amazon. If you want to read it for free, just message Zach.
Message
Tell him
me
how much you like this piece, how much you love this podcast, and he can send you a copy of the book.
That's awesome. I appreciate you doing that. So
yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Scott, for being on. Be sure to subscribe and leave a message. Leave a comment on. Tell us what you think about this interview, and tell us after you read Scott's book, what do you think about them? So, thank you so much for being on. Very nice meeting you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Not everyone understands house music. It's a spiritual thing, a body thing, a soul thing. A soul thing. Not everyone understands house music.